requires a mediator of both parties reaching consensus. He urged the smaller courts to enhance their level of judgment delivery in order to avoid a person serving jail time on issues that could be easily resolved, and also limit congestion of the prisons, as he further called on the federal government to relieve its burden by giving autonomy to the state government to control the state prisons. He observed that in efforts to make reformation a cardinal principle of prison term, every capable individual or groups should encourage and care for inmates through provision of facilities that could impact and reform their lives after their jail term.
If you want to reform a person, you give him alternative means of livelihood. If you go into our prisons, about 80% of the inmates, you see, you'll note that they are youths who, for one reason or the other, found themselves, in such a situation.
Katsina State is one of the beneficiaries of the newly constructed prisons across the country, and it is hoped that when these prisons are inaugurated, they will serve as one of the main catalysts towards prisons decongestion in Nigeria.
In civilized societies, what inmates are made to lose is their freedom. They have access to other social amenities available to others outside. The Enugu Maximum Prisons, which is one of the oldest in the country, is leaving no stone unturned in ensuring discharged inmates are fully stabilized in their immediate society. Chinyere Okoye tells us that the authorities of the prisons in Enugu are working hand in hand with other interest groups to bring about total rehabilitation of inmates to prepare them for life beyond the walls.
The Enugu Maximum Prisons, built to accommodate 638 offenders, currently shelters about 2,063 inmates with over 1,500 awaiting trials. Over the years, authorities of the prisons have provided various vocational activities and materials and have also mapped out programs for the inmates to make them less redundant.
To make them active, just as they are programmed. Every time here is programmed. You make sure if you are in whatever area you are assigned to do, you are there at the right time. If you are to close the workshop, you close and then go to the next program. So it's a kind of regimented program here for the inmates. It's not that you are allowed to roam or be on your own. No. There are time to go to a cell, time to go to workshop, time to go to for PE, recreation, and rest of them. So make sure you get yourself engaged in one thing or the other.
The objective is to ensure that they do not constitute public nuisance to the society outside the prisons. Another step ahead is the introduction of post-secondary school education by establishing the National Open University Center in the prison yard, offering courses in sciences and humanities. According to the Deputy Controller of Prisons Enugu, Ibrahim Usman, these rehabilitation programs are designed for convicts, while admitting that there are few stubborn inmates who are incorrigible, but the authorities are always deploying every means possible to carry all the inmates along.
Stigmatization. Because even when they finish and get their certificate here, and get out, they'll say, are you employed? Have you been convicted? Even when somebody has come out of this place and they make a good tale, or you can say, when I hear it was an ex-convict, people start running away. So stigmatization is a big challenge.
The authorities of Enugu prisons are obviously aware of the enormous task in the rehabilitation of adult offenders.
I have what I call aftercare. This aftercare unit is empowered to assist the inmates in reintegration into the society. by way of getting them, assisted to get them shops where they want to establish, and the government supplies some tools and equipment that will help you. If you're a tailor, they give you a machine and other things that you needed to start the trade. If you are into saloon, they look for all these dryers and also them, so they are not left. This unit, aftercare, that is their sole duty, and they go from time to time to monitor them, to know how they are faring. So they are not just, it's not when you just discharge from prison, they just.
They have therefore opened their doors to other interest groups to be part of the process. Mrs. Clara Ino Eze is a clinical psychologist with the Carmelite Prisons Interest Organization, CAPIO.
Some of these inmates, their families don't really want them to come back because they've been away for years, okay? And they feel that coming back, first of all, it reminds them of the incident, the painful incident that actually led the person to prison. So coming out is like reliving those, painful memories, and, they were not really ready to, accept them and help them to get integrated in the society.
It is therefore the opinion of many that both the society and families should join hands with the government to offer discharged prisoners conducive atmosphere that will make their lives better. It is therefore expected that immediate and extended family members of ex-convicts, and indeed the entire society, will eschew hate, stigma, and other negative behaviors towards ex-convicts to ensure that they are truly reintegrated into the society.
Kano prisons are among major beneficiaries of the ongoing revolution embarked upon by the Buhari administration through provision of infrastructure and improved welfare of inmates. Apart from prison decongestion, the reform is building confidence among inmates who in the past were faced with societal stigma. Mohammed Rabiu Ali reports that a number of infrastructure have been provided in major prison yards in the state.
Before now, the condition of inmates in Nigerian prison service is not something to write about. For instance, Kano Central Prison, which was established in 1910 to harbor 750 inmates, now accommodates 2,087 inmates. Though the narrative has changed with the ongoing reforms in the sector, where all structures are weeding out to provide conducive atmosphere for inmates.
In 10 years back, it was not like this. It was dilapidated. The condition of service was inadequate, and also the sanitation in the prisons was not well kept. And permit me to say also, even the health, the health of the inmates was at stake. But now, if you compare it to previous years, there is tremendous improvement. And this is not unconnected with our audit exercise, NGOs, CSOs, and even, CSOs, including the media.
Welfare in terms of health has improved. One of the testimonies we got was from the Wudil prisons, where an inmate came in sick while the paralegal was interviewing and awaiting trial passing. The inmates came and complained of vomiting, and immediately the doctor was asked to see that particular inmate, even though as at that time they had only one vehicle and he had conveyed inmates to the court. That particular inmate was linked up with an officer who took him to the hospital immediately. And so the paralegal who was at the prison at that time is an eyewitness, and he was quite surprised and impressed at that response. This is an improvement we can speak to.
They hardly complain. Unlike before, that when you go to the inmates, they will be complaining that things are getting bad. But presently, when you go there, there's no complaint.
Another milestone that have taken place in Kano prison were the provision of more logistics, especially vehicles for conveying inmates to and from the court for quick dispensation of justice, welfare of personnel, as well as construction of new mega prison to decongest inmates.
When this government came in, they have added the budgetary allocation for feeding inmates. When you see our inmates now, they are looking healthy and hefty. In fact, we can say they are a blood bank. This government has added budgetary allocation, and every month we used to receive drugs and medicaments from our national headquarters office. You go to the issue of the state government assistance. In fact, this government was the first, or this governor was the first to adhere to the request by His Excellency, the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria, Alhaji Muhammad Buhari, that state governors should assist in decongesting and reforming prison. He was the first to answer that call, because that was when he gave 30 hectares of land, paid compensation, and that is where they are now building a 3,000 capacity mega prison that has everything it takes to reform, rehabilitate, and reintegrate our teeming inmates. When you see the structure, you will know. By the time it's completed, it's going to be the first of its kind in sub-Saharan Africa.
We are not only saying that citizens who are free or who are at liberty are the people entitled to these rights, but however, it also includes inmates because they are the concerns of the government. Now, by looking at that angle, you see that the Constitution also demands the states, even the federal government, to implement on this. And by what is happening currently in prisons, you find out that the government are actually also doing their best to provide these facilities, medical facilities, and medical and health facilities, in order to assist or in order to enable the inmates to obtain or to have a good health conditions in as much as they are inside the prison until they receive the access to justice or until they are being heard before the court.
Stakeholders believe that enhancing access to justice, exercise of prerogative mercy, paying fines of inmates to gain freedom will go a long way in better the life of inmates, and when released from prison, will go back to society as good and law-abiding citizens.
Earlier, the Minister of Interior, Lieutenant General Abdulrahman Dambaza, retired, raised the alarm on the deplorable state of prisons in Nigeria, from congestion in virtually all the prisons to the inmates' exposure to epidemics. The prison environment was seen as a place of condemnation due to incarceration and associated ill treatment. Consequently, inmates on gaining freedom become worse. This has changed with a number of reforms introduced by the federal government and contributions from individuals and organizations to make the prison a place of reformation. Annie Daniels in Lagos says the dream of making inmates better citizens is gradually being realized.
The notion that the prison environment is one that breeds hardened criminals, the dilapidated state of prisons across the country, and poor welfare package for authorities informed the federal government's desire to adequately fund the sector. Today, that step has yielded the expected result, as Nigerian prisons can now compete favorably with other prisons elsewhere.
And it's because the federal government gave the permit for reformers to come in, aside from what the prison officers are doing. They felt that the prison officers will not do it alone, because the prison has changed from being a punishment prison to a correctional facility.
So there's nothing that says that the ex-convict of today cannot be the presidents of tomorrow. Their stars can be changed. Circumstance and situation can propel them to a different thing. So, you know, they are still men, they're still lovable, they're still good fathers, they make good husbands, and they still make good providers. It's all about changing their moral values and their concepts.
These caregivers provide voluntary assistance that translates into wealth creation for these inmates and will further discourage them from engaging in crimes after serving their jail terms. For example, these flowers, shoes, insecticides, paints, and perfumes are all produced by these inmates. That's not all. This fish pond, farm, poultry, and several others are managed by these inmates.
Kirikiri prison soap, antiseptic soap, is for bathing. And we produce all these things here. And we have the machine here producing. And we are begging the society. Prison is not like before. Prison are reformed. So many people that are in prison, when they go to outside, people will chase them out. No, prison is not like that anymore.
Any of our products that you see here, we can do it for you. And most of our products are being sold outside.
If the mindset is wrong, then they get it wrong. But if the mindset is right, then they can get out there and know that this is just a stepping stone for them. So that is why you see all the initiatives that we're doing, the poultry, the farm, the products that they're producing here. And with standard organization here as well, they are quality-oriented products, and they've been produced from inside this facility.
I can assure you that you can source, outsiders can source for their staff from here because they have been well reformed. They went through every activity to make them reformed. And we can say that many of them are reformed, that if possible, you can source for some of your staff here when they leave here. In fact, one of the things we're trying to do is that get partners to come and partner with us here so that they make them pass through their skill acquisition program. Then when they leave here, they were part of their organization out there.
And for those interested in acquiring more education, there is a room for them to do so.
We run primary and secondary school here. Those of them that pass their GC very well, and we enroll them to Open University. We have Open University Center in the prisons here. Recently, the last we added was IT, pure IT. We train them in various IT courses.
Tuition is free. National Open University is granting them tuition free while they are here. But the day they go out, they need to pay. And those who have their first degree, we also encourage them to do their masters. And like I said, we have 2 already who are pursuing their PhD, all inside this place.
According to the Comptroller General of the Nigerian Prison Service, Ahmed Jafaru, various reforms programs have been proposed towards improving the Nigeria prisons. The Nigeria prison system has experienced various reforms programs initiated by the federal government. Now, these reforms programs are expected to address the problem of congestion, overcrowding, improve the living conditions of inmates, and ensure the proper rehabilitation of the inmates. The philosophy of the Nigerian Prison Service is that treatment and rehabilitation of offenders can be achieved through carefully designed and well-articulated administrative, reformative, and rehabilitative programs aimed at inculcating discipline, respect for law and order, and regard for the dignity of honest labor. That's our package on Dateline 360 today. It's been a pleasure. Until our next time on the program, I remain Lydia Odije Ochi. Bye for now.
Yes, it be like say they want to tell us another story again, yo. Now so, you know say people they say I be superstar. But for me, the real superstars are those people where they go vote for the candidate of their choice without violence. So for these upcoming elections, be my superstar. Vote. No fights. No violence. Because the election will be won.
We work together so the future will be brighter.
The West African Currency Board was responsible for issuing currency notes in Nigeria from 1912 to 1959. Prior to its establishment, Nigeria had used various forms of money, including cowries and manillas.
Here we have trade beads brought in by the Europeans when they first came into our shores to trade. And that's the original gin bottle also used in exchange of slaves. By the time the central bank was fully in operations, on 1st of July 1959, we started issuing the Nigerian pounds. As you can see, they all have different colors, shapes, and sizes. Further down, we have the 1968 currencies, which were printed in the Biafran region during the Civil War.
On 1st July 1959, the Central Bank of Nigeria issued the Nigerian currency notes and coins, while the West African Currency Board notes and coins were withdrawn. It was not until 1st July 1962 that legal tender status was changed to reflect the country's new status having gained independence. In 1967, the Nigerian pound note was introduced. It could buy 500 cups of gari. The notes were again changed in 1968 as a war strategy following the misuse of the country's currency notes. The change that took place in January 1973 was a major one, and this involved both currency notes and coins. The 20 naira banknote became the first currency note in Nigeria. On July 1979, new currency notes of 3 denominations, 1 naira, 5 naira, and 10 naira, were introduced with distinctive colors. In 1991, both the 50 kobo and 1 naira notes were coined. Expansion in economic activities and to facilitate an efficient payment system, the 100 naira was introduced in December 1999, 200 naira in November 2000, 500 naira in April 2001, and 1,000 naira in October 2005. As part of economic reforms, 50 naira, 20 naira, 10 naira and 5 naira banknotes, as well as 1 naira and 50 kobo coins were reissued with new designs on February 28, 2007, while a new 2 naira coin was introduced.
Yes. Now my dirty they smell like this. Now to throw away am quick. This kind smell fit make man sick. That woman throw away dirty for ground. Me sef go do the same this time around. Hold up.
See, to do this kind badness by the book, you make sure say person no dey look. And then you drop am nicely, bros. Nothing will happen. Trust me.
See, if you throw away dirty for ground, another person said throw away dirty. Everybody can begin to throw away dirty for ground. Everywhere go come the smell. Gutter go block, road go block, and you will like to dey dab. I say no more dabbing for you, be that too. Dab, 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 dab. Yes.
More than 3 million permanent voter cards remain uncollected.
Abatunde Fashola urges Nigerians to remain committed to building a democratic nation.
Nigerians in Canada also calling on the electorate to keep calm and wait patiently to perform their civic duties on the new dates by INEC.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on the election postponement. Matters are rising.
Now, barely 6 hours to the commencement of the presidential and National Assembly elections for Saturday, 16th February 2019. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, announced that due to logistics as well as operational challenges, it will no longer be conducting the election.
Well, Blessing, that was the news, and INEC subsequently rescheduled the presidential and National Assembly elections to Saturday, the 23rd of February this year, while the governorship, state House of Assembly, as well as the Federal Capital Territory Area Council elections will now hold on the 9th of March 2019.
And according to the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, this was a difficult, I quote, that's his statement now, this was a difficult decision for the commission to take, but necessary for the successful delivery of the elections and the consolidation of our democracy. End of quote.
Well, Nigerians have continued to react to the decision by INEC to shift the elections, and those reactions have come from a wide range of quarters, including the ruling political party as well as the opposition political parties, which have both expressed their displeasure over the rescheduling of the elections.
Reactions really from the traditional media to social media out there on the street. But now, going forward, it's just 1 week, enough for the electoral body to overcome these logistics as well as operational challenges they talked about and to give us the free, fair and credible elections that we have clamored for.
Very pertinent question you have asked there, Blessing. The same question, of course, will also go to the political parties and all others who are involved in the electoral process. For instance, for the political parties, they will have to remobilize their agents and indeed galvanize the electorate one more time to get ready to go to the polls this coming Saturday.
Yeah. Well, apart from the questions, there are other situations. People have wondered about the economic implications of that. At least so many businesses were shut down, whether small scale, large scale, everywhere. Actually, it was as if the whole nation, not really just the nation, even the international community was ready for Nigeria's election. Now, what about the international as well as local observers? Those are areas that people have actually committed themselves. A lot of people traveled out to, at least moved out from the immediate residence to wherever they had actually registered. Well, how do you reassemble as well as readjust to some of those commitments that people either to have put for their own activities? Now, there are gaps in communication, no doubt, between INEC and critical partners. What is going to be happening in moving forward? What kind of communication do we need now? What about the aspect of security architecture? These are some of the issues we shall be focusing on as the conversation proceeds in the course of the program this morning. My name is Blessing Abu. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, and thank you for joining us on this first edition for the week.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Blessing and also welcoming you to the program, reaching you as always on the network service of Africa's largest television network. In the course of the program, we have our regular complimentary segments, and these are newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and others. But first, let's take the highlights of the news with Ifeoma Ojinta. Morning, Ifeoma.
Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Blessing. And here is the news. More than 3 million permanent voters' cards remain uncollected. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, who made this known in Abuja, said they would be in custody of the Central Bank of Nigeria for safekeeping until after the election.
And we house them in the central bank for safekeeping until after the elections. After the elections, then we'll make the cards once again available for collection and also resume the registration of voters, for which the Commission will issue a timetable after the election.
The Director, Election Planning and Monitoring of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, Babatunde Fashola, has urged Nigerians to remain committed to the task of building a democratic nation and not to allow the rescheduling of the Presidential and National Assembly elections deter their efforts. While addressing a press conference in Abuja, he appealed to Nigerians to see themselves as important stakeholders and wants the electoral umpire INEC to be more transparent in their activities towards the rescheduled Presidential and National Assembly polls.
For contact and mobilization, on behalf of the APC Campaign Council, demand greater openness and transparency in INEC's preparations ahead of the Saturday, 23rd of February 2019 elections. We want to know, for example, what steps have been taken by INEC with CBN, the central bank, to assess and to take inventory of materials and to brief the public about what their condition is. We think that this will be helpful to dispel rumors, to calm nerves, that really the process is intact and that INEC is in control.
Meanwhile, Nigerians in Canada, also monitoring the political climate, are calling on the electorate to keep calm and wait patiently to perform their civic duties on the new dates announced by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. This was the views of key Nigerian Canadian officials at an event on the Canadian Parliament Hill in Ottawa.
I would say they should exercise some bit of patience, and hopefully within this 1 week, INEC should be able to get it right, and hopefully we'll see a very peaceful and smooth elections. And I encourage everyone to come out there, exercise their civic responsibility, because to be honest, this is a responsibility. And regardless of the challenges that we face, I hope that everyone will be encouraged to come out next week Saturday to exercise that right.
We need to nurture our democracy. We need to do it right. It's important to show to the outside community, if we notice something is wrong, it needs to be corrected right away.
Advise everyone to keep their eyes on the prize, keep focused, because this is something that wasn't anticipated. No one did the risk analysis for this, that way was going to happen. We could have thought of different scenarios, but it happened as it is. But everyone should group back together, and be optimistic and objective.
They should not take it too bad. They should basically still come out and still exercise their right.
Before you know it, it's on Saturday. There's a reason for everything. So we need to calm down and relax, then wait for Saturday, go out and vote.
Still on the postponement of the election, the United States Embassy says it fully supports the joint statement by the heads of the ECOWAS and other international election observation missions on the postponement of the February elections. This is contained in a press release by the Public Affairs section of the Embassy Press Office this Sunday. The embassy further says it is encouraging all Nigerians to ensure a free, fair, peaceful and credible elections by voting in peace on the 23rd and support the Independent National Electoral Commission as it finalizes preparations this week. The National Assembly has postponed its resumption of plenary to Tuesday, 26th of February 2019. A statement by the clerk of the National Assembly, Sani Omolori, explains that the postponement from the earlier date, 19th of February to 26th, is due to the postponement of the general elections. The clerk urges all senators and House of Representative members to resume plenary on the stated dates. Victims of the communal clash in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State, which led to the death of about 66 persons, have yet to stabilize. The Governor Nasru El-Rufai visited the communities for a first-hand assessment.
is equal, and we do not create lives, and we sanctify every human life, and we respect it.
The residents were lured to that riverine and was slaughtered. A total of 37 were said to have been buried there. You have seen the graveyard. As far as we are concerned, what we reported was 66, comprising male, female, and children.
The police went on the other way and effected some arrest. They are right now undergoing interrogation in the state CID.
Ogun State has continued to intensify implementation of its urban renewal developments by embarking on additional road reconstruction. In this regard, Governor Ibikunle Amosun inspected some of the roads under construction.
Yes, we feel bad, but since they said that this will allow them to give Nigerians a very credible election as a people, as a nation, I think we should give them the benefit of the doubt and exercise some patience.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Blessing and Kingsley after this break.
What we are really cultivating here is a better future for all Nigerian women. And it's not always easy. Panadol Extra relieves headache, backache, joint pain, toothache, and menstrual pain. The pain is worth it.
When I was a little girl, I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I was so excited to sing in the choir.
And your shirts are always so white.
I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secrets passed down to me. It's Jik, of course. The original trusted bleach, which can be used all around your house for amazing results.
Shh, it's our little secret.
It's no secret. It's Jik's best ever extra whitening power. Just Jik it.
See something? You can make the difference. Report all security incidents, suspicious activities, drug trafficking, arms smuggling, kidnapping, armed robbery, suspicious terrorist, critical infrastructure vandalism, and other acts of violence in your area. No need to give information about yourself. Not your name. Only report the incident you see or suspect. Send an SMS toll-free to 196, Fearless Fang Reporting Platform for confidential incident reporting to the National Crisis Management Center. The relevant law enforcement agencies will be directed to investigate and respond. The confidential reporter is a fearless fang who cannot be intimidated. SMS the incident to 196 toll-free. Be a fearless fang for the security of Nigeria. This message is brought to you by the National Crisis Management Center.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toba Daba then and Ishak Modibo Kawu now. This edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standard to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency caution. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
The program is Good Morning Nigeria. Let's take a look at some business stories. Now, the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, puts on hold the directive that's freezing bank accounts to, well, put now by the directive given, which is to look at issue of to suspend lien, which is a security interest granted on bank accounts within a period of 30 days. Now, correspondent Comfort Amodi reports that the directive, which takes immediate effect, is to allow affected taxpayers with frozen accounts regularize their tax positions. Now, let's join her for more details.
The average intercity bus fare report for the month of January 2019 indicates a decrease by minus 13.90% month-on-month to 1,541.38, while average fare paid by commuters for bus journey within the city decreased by minus 3.60% month-on-month and by 4.78% year-on-year to 175.07 in January 2019 from 181.61 in December 2018. And fare for waterway decreased by minus 5.53% month-on-month and minus 15.81% year-on-year to 537.14 in January 2019 from 568.58 in December 2018. Meanwhile, the National Bureau of Statistics will on Tuesday, February 19, 2019, release the road transport data for the fourth quarter of 2018. The Nigerian was advanced 81 basis points, contributing to a 3.76% gain week-on-week, with strong performances from the oil and gas at plus 594 basis points week-on-week. And at the exchange markets, operators tend to be scaling the impact of input programs as FX hopes to reach 50,000 farmers in 2019 and grow from there, and plans to launch the first commodities index in Africa in January 2019, as well as other instruments for investors interested in gaining exposure to commodity-backed assets. With business news, I'm Comfort Amudu.
Thank you, Comfort, for the updates on business. Next for us on Good Morning Nigeria is a review of the papers this morning.
He couldn't do his e-voting, but he's here to take a look at what happened on Saturday. Postponement, well, those are some things that gets in the papers. Good morning to you, Bayo.
Morning, bless me. I call it false start. In athletics, we call it false start. You go back to the blocks again, because this is a political race. Good morning, Kisi. Good morning, Nigeria.
What did you just say?
False start.
I'm sure you are aware of the new rules by IAAF. One false start and you are disqualified.
No, we won't disqualify in those.
But it has not reached for political race.
I mean, you saw that happen to Usain Bolt.
Yes.
There you go. That's the World Athletics Championship. So in the past, you always had a second chance after the first false start. But now, one false start, and then
But this political false start,
you find a red card.
Flag, seriously.
But not in this case.
Certainly. Okay, let's start off with the Guardian this morning. Leading for the Guardian, voters, candidates stranded as airlines cancel flights. That's on the front page of the Guardian. We have two riders. Nama, that's Nama denies flight disruption during polls materials disruption, and also economy lost $5 billion to elections postponement, says expert. That story starts right there, but continues on page 6. That's for the Guardian. Still on INEC on election matters, suspended campaigns. INEC under pressure. We have about 4 riders to that. We'll continue electioneering in line with Electoral Act provisions. It's coming from the People's Democratic Party. We'll campaign. This is from Oshomole that said. APC chairman. Opposition parties can go ahead. This is coming from the coalition of the CUPP. And also APC holds caucus meeting today. Details of all this story you find on pages 6 and 8. Okay. Kingsley, what's trending with election?
New Telegraph. I mean, I should be expected. The lead stories of the papers we have this morning are focusing on matters arising from the shift in the election dates. New Telegraph has it poll shift. It says we've lost billions to election mobilization, and that's according to candidates. With the number of riders there, NAMA, that's the airspace management agencies, weather didn't affect distribution of INEC materials. This naira was could not hold. We are going to look for money again to remobilize. That's New Telegraph. And to the Daily Independent, I say the late story, but immediately above the nameplate says CUPP dares INEC, asks parties to resume campaigns. And the late story says how international community saved INEC chairman's job. With 4 riders sacking him unreasonable, according to Sage, and Buhari attends APC emergency meeting today. APC Buhari's government sabotaging INEC, again a claim by PDP. INEC meets again today. That's the rider to that. Second lead story below the photograph showing an oil spill site in Bayelsa says Nigeria loses over 800 billion naira to poll shift. Stakeholders fear massive withdrawal and stoppage of funds. Say real cost will be loss of investor confidence. Details on page 41. As a consequence, National Assembly postpones resumption to February 26th. Bayo, let's take those stories and then return to others.
Yes, indeed, Kingsley. Anxiety and tensions about the election eventually turned into an anticlimax. After reviewing its operational logistics, INEC at 2:40 a.m. announced the deferment of the election from 16th of February to 23rd. INEC has set out its plan over a year ago, since, in fact, January 2018. It followed a 14-point program, almost like clockwork. In fact, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu was once asked, is there any possibility of postponing the election? And he declared, I can't foresee any possibility of postponing the election. INEC is not even contemplating postponing. At the review of the meeting to ascertain whether all systems go, they found that there were factors that have combined to frustrate INEC, and it couldn't continue. They included logistical challenges, delivery of materials, and some element of sabotage ensuing from fire in Abia, Anambra, and Plateau. And therefore, INEC announced the shift of the presidential and National Assembly election 23rd of February, while those of the state governors and state assembly to 9th of March. It is not the first time that elections are being postponed. If you recall, in 2011, it was shifted from 9th of April to 16th of April. And the last election, 2015, the SY National Security Advisor actually dropped a hint of security concerns at Chatham House in London. INEC insisted it was ready. In fact, the meeting of the National Council of State had to be called, and the election was pushed forward for 6 weeks. Currently, the People's Democratic Party says that it is the hand of Jacob and the voice of Esau. Spokesperson were saying that it was a deliberate design to thwart the will of Nigerians, and therefore they called for the resignation of the INEC chairman. In the same way, spokesperson for all presidential campaign of the APC said the postponement was rumored by an opponent's allied social media and was put on the air and later on taken up. So it was a premeditated thing. Aside of all this, the president, who was in Daura, had actually told his aide to come around 8:30 for him to come and vote. He said to have been deeply saddened by the postponement. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar was in Adamawa to vote, and when he was asked, he said, well, he's not perturbed, and he's expecting all voters to exercise patience. At that time, he was not sure of what was happening, and he was heading for Abuja for briefing. Many Nigerians who had traveled to vote are now in a quandary, to vote or not to vote, to travel back or not to travel back. Meanwhile, there have been some development. For now, INEC is involved in engaging what is called reverse logistics. They are to retrieve sensitive materials from all areas to safe haven at the fortress of the central bank. Also, smart cards numbering about 180,000 will have to be retrieved and reconfigured from 16th of February to 23rd of February. 2 or 3 states have material even distributed up to area council level, and all of this will have to retrieve. And to ensure the integrity of the material, political parties will have to be there. Already, INEC has said campaigns should stop and PVC distribution will not continue. But political parties are challenging that. In the meantime, INEC has given an update. It said from the continuous voter registration that commenced in April and ended last August, a collection of 14,028,000 PVC have been collected. That is about 76%. And those that were not collected, about 10,087,000, will now be retrieved and kept safely in the vault of the central bank. Campaigns, there are developments following this. Annex has announced that campaigns and issue of PVC has ceased. The political parties are claiming that this is a violation of the Electoral Act. It calls Section 99 of the Electoral Act that says that campaigns begins 90 days before election and stops 24 hours before election. And therefore, you cannot ask the political parties to fold their arms and sit for between now and Saturday and not continue to mobilize sensitive. You could also recall that the spirit of voters have actually been dampened, and there is need to actually allow campaign, because the law specifically says campaign should stop 24 hours before election. That are the follow-up for the elections so far.
Bayo, thanks a lot for your analysis of the issues. Just on one of them, which is the resumption of political campaigns ahead of voting. I mean, I'm sure everybody watched the ANEC chairman at the press conference at the International Conference Center in Abuja on Saturday. There seemed to have been no valid reason for restraining political parties from resuming political campaigns ahead of voting on Saturday. That's to say, with a deadline on Thursday this week. The ANEC chairman responded to a question and said no, that there will be no resumption of campaigns. Now, was there a reasonability test to all of that? Or was it in tandem with the provisions of the appropriate legislation, that's to say the Electoral Act? It seemed that there was no considered response to that particular issue. When the elections were shifted in 2015, from the 14th of February to the 28th of March, political campaigns resumed.
Yes.
So, assuming you shifted the elections from Saturday, the 16th, to Monday today, which is the 18th, I mean, somebody would say, look, on a reasonable basis, what can you campaign for on Sunday? But there is at least a one-week lag or a 5-day lag that political parties could take advantage of. On the basis of law, I don't think ANEC is right. And the political parties could very well go ahead to say, look, we are going to campaign. What is the sanction for a political party that resumes campaign today if he still has messages to give to his supporters, especially considering the circumstances that we are in?
Exactly.
Yes, I think there's an expected pronouncement by INEC today that will confirm that. And I think they will sit and review the position, because all the political parties are already saying they are going to start their campaign.
Exactly. Because only on page 8, there's a story that...
The parties don't, I mean, it doesn't require any special press conference to address, to say that, okay, you can resume your campaigns. You have shifted the elections by 1 week. Parties have at least a 5-day window within which to campaign. If the parties decide to abide by the law, they can campaign from now until Thursday. You don't have to be... Look, is INEC going to be monitoring the campaigns? Will the campaigns of the political parties disrupt the movement of materials and other logistics that INEC is concerned with? But it's a different matter. Of course, there will be issues pertaining to the legality of what the parties are doing in terms of the content of their messaging. But in terms of the time and the time frame for that, I think the parties are well on course to resume their campaigns.
Well, like we already saw in some of the headlines, some parties have actually vowed to actually resume the campaigns. And on page 8, we have this saying INEC reviews ban on political campaigns today, even though that's what the paper is saying. That's on the inside page of the Daily Sun. Okay,
I'm sorry, Bayo. You know, the other issue, I'm sorry, bless you. You know, we're hearing about logistics.
And operational.
In 2015, yes, the initial alibi was security on the basis of the advisory by the then National Security Advisor. 2015. But when INEC then had a 6-week window, INEC then realized that, look, it still had huge logistical challenges ahead of it. If you recall, the issue of the distribution of the PVCs, at the time, certain parts of the country were said to have recorded over 90%. Some other parts, including Lagos, had barely 50%. So they then had to, of course, extend the collection of the PVCs. They also had to, do some more mastering, if you like, of the card readers, some of which, of course, failed on the very day of the election. But INEC used the opportunity of that 6-week window as approved by the Council of State, and then the political parties themselves, when they met with INEC to say, look, let's discuss this matter, and the political parties voted for an extension. So INEC used the opportunity, to take care of its logistic challenges have now become a major issue in our elections. And somebody who works in the media industry, precision business, for instance, would know that these are, if you're in the newspaper business, logistics are issues that you deal with, so-called circulation department, on a daily basis, whether there's bad weather, whether there are armed robbers on the road, whether the road is good, whether the road is bad, you have to deliver your paper on a daily basis. Otherwise, your paper is what? Stale and dead.
Actually, the challenge is not far-fetched. I think INEC will now have to look at the logistics. Without anybody telling me, by the time I saw reports of sensitive material, because of safety, moving at the last minute, there was fear that they probably could not reach their destination. You had them all amassed at the airport, and you have the Nigerian Air Force, Hercules, about to lift them. There is every possibility, particularly it was so close to voting day, that you mix things up. You will have material meant for one state mistakenly taken to the another. And that is exactly some of what transpired.
Why would you, a question has been asked, why did they have to wait until Wednesday to start moving materials? If they are sensitive materials, you are taking them to a strong room. Couldn't they have left days earlier?
Well, I think they were wiser for it now.
Okay, quickly.
All right, but no, just before
there are other challenges that we need to draw attention. Particularly in Rivers State, the All Progressive Congress in Rivers State are saying that, as far as they are concerned, they are going to field their candidates, and the INEC cannot stop them. They say they are relying on the claim that of the stay of execution from the ruling of the Port Harcourt High Court. In the same way, in Zamfara State, the party claims that the primaries had been validated by the Zamfara High Court, and because the appeal against it had been turned down and cancelled at the Sokoto Court of Appeal. Therefore, they should be back on the ballot. And the two parties are threatening in those states that the INEC has no ground to exclude them. Meanwhile, the ruling on the case of Zamfara is due to come on 2 days. Supposed to be the election initially was supposed to have been 2nd March. It was supposed to come on February 28th. So that is when we will have a final ruling.
But I think there was a Supreme Court decision on the Rivers election, on the Rivers election with respect to parties that could field candidates, in particular the APC. But as you just said, that's the matter that is coming up. Very quickly, there's a story out of Kogi State. It's the second lead right at the foot of the front page of a New Telegraph. It says, Governor's ADC withdraws Deputy Governor's security aids. Achuba, my life in danger. Kogi Commissioner of Police, we are resolving the issue. That story is also there on the front page of Daily Independent, along with, of course, a rash of killings that have been reported on the front pages of the papers.
All right, that'll be it. Bayo, we'll be able to look more into that. That'll be it for today. Tomorrow is another day, certainly.
Thank you. See you tomorrow then.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Time now to kickstart our discussion, but that will be after this background report as put together by Kunle Adeyeye. But then, a break beckons first.
So, how do I look, guys?
Aha! I see what's wrong.
What?
The wall doesn't match your elegance.
Then we must do something about it right away.
At Royal Ceramics, we offer you a wide range of beautiful wall and floor tiles designed specially to fit your lifestyle.
So, what do you guys think?
Thank goodness we changed to Royal Ceramic tiles.
I agree.
Like mother, like daughter.
Royal Ceramics, finish in style.
Mass Medical Mission has finally done it, ensuring that the prevention of cancer and cancer-related ailments is available to you right where you are. Our mobile cancer center, also known as Pink Cruise, is equipped with relevant state-of-the-art medical equipment to serve you wherever you are. All you have to do is apply for the Pink Cruise to come to your community or organization by sending a request to info@pinkcruise.org. Remember to suggest 3 alternative dates when you will prefer the Pink Cruise to come to conduct free preventive healthcare at your doorstep, including checking your body, your eyes, and your teeth. For more information on the Pink Cruise and how to take advantage of it, please log on to www.pinkcruise.org or visit us at the MMM House, number 31 Abode Thomas Street, Surulere, Lagos, or call 0805-633-4288. Mission Pink Cruise, taking wellness to all.
Immediately, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) released the guidelines for the 2019 general elections. Various political parties conducted their primaries for different elective offices. On completion of the primaries, campaigns began. Candidates vying for the presidential office crisscrossed the length and breadth of the country, sensitizing the electorate to their plans for a greater Nigeria. Campaigns officially ended on the 14th of February 2019, and the political gladiators retreated to their base to take part in the 2019 presidential and National Assembly elections on February 16, while that of the governorship and state houses of assembly election was scheduled for the 2nd of March 2019. Some hours to the presidential and National Assembly election, INEC postponed the election and gave reasons.
Of the implementation of its logistics and operational plan and the determination to conduct free, fair, and credible elections, the Commission came to the conclusion that proceeding with the election as scheduled is no longer feasible. Consequently, the Commission has decided to reschedule the presidential and National Assembly elections to Saturday, 23rd February 2019. Furthermore, the governorship, State House of Assembly, and Federal Capital Territory Area Council elections are rescheduled to Saturday, 9th March 2019. This will afford the Commission the opportunity to address identified challenges in order to maintain the quality of our elections. This was a difficult decision for the Commission to take, but necessary for the successful delivery of elections and the consolidation of our democracy.
Many reactions have since trailed the postponement. The questions to ask are, is INEC decision in the interest of democracy? Will this in any way affect the credibility of the election? Will the election hold this time as planned? What should Nigerians expect? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will provide answers shortly.
All right. Thank you very much there, Kunle, for that background. We have with us guests on Good Morning Nigeria who, of course, are regulars on the program. First, let's bring back again. He was with us last Friday, the INEC Director in charge of Voter Education and Publicity, Mr. Oluwole Osaze-Ozie. Mr. Osaze-Ozie, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Good morning.
Okay. And we also have with us in the studios Professor Umaru Pate. He's a professor of mass communication at Bayero University in Kano. Professor Pate, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Kingsley.
Okay. And also here with us is retired Assistant Inspector General of Police. He's also a lawyer, Mr. Felix Ogboado. Retired AIG, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Okay. And public affairs analysts and columnists, Jide Ojo, good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay. I'm not sure if our access to the Benin Network studios is cleared. All right, let's go over to, you can see him on the right side of your split screen, Dr. Osawaru Okunzuwa, a public affairs analyst, also one of our regulars on Good Morning Nigeria. Dr. Okunzuwa, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Good to be here.
All right, gentlemen, welcome once again to Good Morning Nigeria. And of course, the matters arising from the postponement of the elections. There are a number of issues, a number of perspectives to take on this. Let's begin first with Professor Umaru Pate. Professor Umaru Pate, let's take this from the communication point of view. Up until the eve of the election, the assurances and the comments from a number of officials who were responsible for the elections were to the effect that, look, they were ready. And then in the small hours of Saturday, suddenly the elections were called off and rescheduled. What does that communicate with regard to management of information pertaining to a very critical national exercise?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. Just like you have noted in the beginning and when you were reviewing the newspapers, people were really disappointed. Of course, it's natural. When expectations are raised, naturally, and if they are not fulfilled, people will be disappointed. But I want to look at it from a positive perspective. What will have been the consequences of conducting an inconclusive election or election with some state not fully covered or with all the logistical challenges mentioned? And again, this raises the question, why was INEC unable to galvanize the national support, galvanize the stakeholders as well as the international community before the time? I'm sure they must have realized that there were challenges, they could foresee that, but were unable to identify and probably mention that to Nigerians. Instead, they continued to build hope. And when you build somebody's hope to the last point, only for you to dash it, it becomes quite shocking, disappointing, and in fact, to some extent, aggressively frustrating. And I will look at it from that perspective. And also, some people are accusing INEC of being incompetent, of being inept. Well, I wouldn't go to that extent, but like you have also said, in the newspaper world, people at every point in time are working against deadline. And one would have assumed that INEC was also working against that, against specific deadlines which they fixed almost a year ago. So their inability to communicate with Nigerians or to mobilize the support of almost everybody that is involved in terms of communicating and giving them minute-by-minute assurances of, well, or rather what they did was giving minute-by-minute assurances only for that to end up being dashed. So that perhaps could explain the reasons why Nigerians are shocked. The international community may appear suspicious of our credibility and competence to be able to undertake very serious tasks like elections.
Professor, this isn't the first time we'll have elections been shifted about, yes. But this is more like the closest to it. And we're still looking at aspect of the communication. These were teething problems. Well, it could have been said maybe it was in the last minute. But obviously from at least feelers here and there now, there are indications that even some of those were already there for everyone to see. But INEC still kept mute till last minute, reassuring that we were ready.
That's the point I've raised earlier on. And you see, that has also given rise to a lot of suspicions, a lot of innuendos from all sorts of quarters. But one thing again here is, you could see all the political parties accusing INEC, which means INEC might be doing the right thing. If PDP was saying, okay, INEC, you have done the right thing, or AP was saying you have done the right, or the other parties, but in the event that all of them are accusing them of supporting the other, it means perhaps they're in the middle. In a conflict situation, if the arbiter is accused by the two, it means he may be doing the right thing. But I'm not saying that INEC is doing the right thing in this, because the issue of logistics shouldn't have been a real issue. Is it because of the kind of insinuations people are making? Go through the social media and see what people are saying. Some are talking of corruption. Some are talking that their system might have been hacked. All sorts of allegations. And these are things that will poison the psychology of the people. And at the end of the day, whatever the outcome of these elections will be, people will still talk on it. So it means INEC must work hard in the coming few days to reassure Nigerians that, yes, we postpone this thing for the best of this country, for the best of the future of Nigeria.
Mr. Judeojo, Yes, sir. Even apart from Good Morning Nigeria, we've had you come on another program, Nigeria Today. We've talked about the readiness of everyone, every stakeholder, from INEC to election monitors. Where exactly, or what exactly is logistics, operational, the place of all this in actually addressing a critical national assignment like this for INEC, as well as those the different aspects to what people now are talking about days after?
Yeah. Good morning, Nigerians, once again. I guess, you know, the issue with our election and the disappointment being expressed by majority of Nigerians is not so much because we are not sympathetic towards the electoral management body, but because the communication was defective. The operational logistics is always a nightmare, and the INEC chairman actually addressed that in his press conference. You know, the sheer number of ballot papers to be printed, 420-something million. For the presidential alone, we are talking of I think 32 million or something. Then you look at the vast nature of our country. If you put all of this together, anything could have gone wrong. But this, my own personal opinion, is that should not be our new normal. That every electoral cycle will have justification for postponement. Exactly. We have this in 2011. In fact, I was in Lagos observing the election. Midway, about noon, that was when INEC chairman came on here and said, we have to halt this election because materials couldn't get to some places. Now, in 2015, it was also a disappointing postponement, but it was the cost in 2015 was not as much as what the nation is incurring now. Why did I say so? We have 7 days to the election. The election was postponed on February 7th. The election was to hold 14th. So you have, the observers have not deployed to the field. You know, the media has not sent their representatives to all over the country. Even the commission staff have not left their stations. But here you have assurance. I was on a radio program, you know, mobilizing. It's Friday morning. It was an INEC program that I was invited to galvanize and, you know, mobilize people. And as at that time, there was no inkling there was going to be a postponement. And you look at the enormous cost. You saw the newspaper review, billions of naira. Who compensates? I mean, INEC can say we are not complaining about funds, but with political parties and contestants not complain, will civil society organizations not complain, will the media not complain? We saw your correspondents all over. They were already in Daura, Yola, and several other places to take on life as the presidential candidates. Who pays them this compensation? So we will have saved the day, even if we have postponed the election as Wednesday. Wednesday, I mean, so many people travel Thursday, Friday, will have stayed back, and of course, we will have still felt disappointed, but the economic loss will not have been as it is. But that is not to say that INEC can foresee all situations. Like the INEC chairman said, as at even Friday night, they were still optimistic that they could go through, they could pull through. But I think it wasn't that Friday that because I know, I am familiar with the operation of the commission. I mean, this is one election that was most elaborately prepared for. We have election project plan, we have a strategic plan, we have election management system in place, and all of this, when you are ticking the box and it gets to 1 week and you feel that some things are not going according to plan, I mean, you are on the side of caution. How do I mean? Postpone to say we need to sort out one or two things because of XYZ reasons. That way we will have, the lamentation will not be as deep-rooted as it is now. But the fact that the commission kept me, and up to midnight, I was here till 11:30 in the night on your election decide program. The rumor mills have started gaining ground at that point in time, and we were like, okay, maybe before we finish the program, it will be confirmed. No confirmation. I went to sleep past midnight. only for somebody to wake me up at 4 a.m. to say, please, I want to confirm as the election be postponed. I said, no, I don't have confirmation. But when I checked my WhatsApp, the INEC chairman press conference, that short press conference was sent to me. And I said, I had to call the person back to say, election has been postponed. Yeah, that's the most annoying thing for people. That why wait till the dawn, 5 hours, 6 hours to the election to now communicate the postponement? Is it that the commission was not aware that this... We know in 2011 there was no smart card reader. So the fact that there was no smart card reader in 2011, we couldn't say the reconfiguration that will take about 5-6 days will come into the equation. But even if it wasn't, if the system had worked seamlessly as we have expected, that the departments are communicating with one another and the chairman is getting up to the hour, feedback from the field, and it was obvious, even 72 hours to the election, you postpone, the loss will have been largely mitigated. But waiting till the dawn of the election day is a no-no for most people.
All right, Joe, thank you very much. Retired AIG Ogbado, let's have your take on this from whatever perspective, including the security implications of all of this.
Well, thank you very much. I think my colleagues have said it all. But the point I really want to emphasize on is that INEC waited too late to start dispatching the sensitive materials and other materials. That was the major problem. But when you take a second look, the justification for that, I'm not speaking for INEC, from my own perception is that probably the problem of insecurity, or if we deliver these materials too early to the various locations, they might be destroyed, they might be stolen, all manner of things. So they said, let's wait till the last minute so that we'll have just a few days to the elections. But they would have taken care of all of that. Take them way ahead of time for the date of the elections. Put them in very secure places. Take, for instance, the fire incidents we had in 3 states. Abia, Anambra, and Plateau states. The one in Anambra State in Oka, it was a container. A lot of people were asking, how did the fire get into this container? Why would I not think of having fireproof environment to secure these materials? So it's a very worrisome situation. This morning, as we were waiting to come for this program, as we were having a newspaper review, Nama was saying that their inability to deliver materials promptly had nothing to do with the bad weather. But INEC has told us that it was bad weather, so maybe the planes couldn't take off and all of that. But now might say, no, it had nothing to do with bad weather. So we really don't know who to believe now. But essentially, we will want to believe that in subsequent elections, sensitive materials will be delivered early enough to their various locations, and adequate security arranged for them, so that we have to wait till the last minute to be facing all these kind of situations. We need to be proactive. And that is very, very, very important. And you can imagine the losses, like people have emphasized, in terms of materials meant for the elections, in terms of Nigerians who traveled, in terms of business shutdowns and all of that. And what is our fear evil now? With this postponement, those of them that traveled to places where they were registered to vote there, in compliance with legal provision, made provision for maybe 1 or 2, 3 days. After the elections, they go back to where they came from. But now, they might be forced to go back to where they are based, and that might lead to, they might not be able to go back again for the day the election will be shifted to. And that will generate a lot of apathy towards next coming election, the dates they were put for us. So in essence, we really need to address all of these issues. First and foremost, materials must be delivered well ahead of the date of the election so that we don't spring all these surprises on people. You can imagine the frustration, the anger that everybody expressed.
Yeah,
what happened.
While you are still on
yes.
this, I mean, you raised the security issue, and INEC itself is also concerned about the security of its materials, particularly the sensitive materials. Is it necessarily the case that the law enforcement agencies cannot provide adequate security for electoral materials if they were deployed earlier than probably what they tried to do last week? Whether they are kept in a private residence or otherwise, but if you say, look, this is a strong room that you are nominating for this purpose, can the security agencies not provide the required security?
Of course, why not? Now look at most of the materials now being domiciled in central bank offices nationwide. If INEC had met with the security agents to say, look, we're moving these materials to location A in so-so state, we're moving them to location D in so-so state, please oblige us adequate security. Of course, that will be arranged. And we have more than enough personnel, security personnel, to make sure that that is done. But that wasn't done. But like I said, I think INEC's decision to do what they did was the fear that, oh, if these materials are delivered too early, they might run the risk of losing them, being vandalized and things like that. So it's a mistake that must guard against. And when people keep on saying, oh, this is not the first time elections have been postponed, I don't subscribe to that. We'll keep on justifying the justifiable, defending defensible. We cannot keep on repeating the same mistakes over and over. That's in a circle. It's not right. It's not right. So I think it's very, very important that materials will be delivered timeously, early enough, way ahead of the date scheduled for the elections. And wherever they're delivered to, security agencies, at the instance of INEC requesting them to do so, must provide watertight security to make sure these items are secured. If, for instance, there are security agencies in some of these places where some of these things happen, it's the security agencies are going to blame. But they were left here, none of them left here in Abuja to be delivered quarter to, a few minutes, a few hours to the elections. And look at where we find ourselves today.
All right, retired AIG Felix Obuadu, thank you very much. But let's go over to our Benin Network studios before we come to Mr. Osaze Ozu here to respond to some of these issues and, of course, give a wider perspective from INEC's position. Dr. Shawaro Kunzua, you listen to the guests. Let's have your own broad sweep on the postponement of the elections.
Our compatriots have said in your studio in Abuja, I think the postponement caused a great deal of consternation around the country, and people were sorely disappointed. The figure has been given already, but I'm sure over time, the economists and allied scientists will be able to compile the actual cost of that postponement. And going by what our friends in the studio have said so far, I think the major quarrel there is failure to give adequate notice. But on the other side of it, I think postponing the election, going by the reason disclosed by the INEC chairman, is probably more in national interest than conducting elections that will end up being in shambles. So maybe our compatriots will have to bear with INEC and bear with all of the persons involved in the conduct of election. That is already 3 days after the postponement and some 4 days ahead. So we still go out and cast our votes all the same. And the way things have gone, they stay within the law. The INEC is empowered to do what is done. They have the judgment to also decide whether they could proceed or not. For me, I think we should grant INEC the benefit of the doubt. The chairman has said they wanted to deliver quality election. That's what he's told the nation. So let's support him. Let's support all those who work with him so that in another 4 or 5 days' time, we'll all go and decide who our governors or our president will be in the next 4 years or so. It's a kind of a motive matter. No doubt, people have been imputing different motives to the postponement. But if we are a democracy and we proceed by the rule of law, INEC has stayed within the limits of the law. That doesn't mean that the sensibilities of the populace should not be taken into cognizance. And by what people have been saying, even if you look at the demeanor of the INEC chairman while he was making the announcement, I am disposed towards believing that INEC was circumspect enough before they made the announcement to postpone the election. So doubts have been generated, but we have another 4 days to dispel those doubts. And we would believe this postponement is a deep investment, just like the NN chairman has said, in the sustenance of our democracy, in the conduct of a better election on Saturday, March 23rd. So let's be very hopeful. Let's remain patriotic. Let's support the INEC to make sure our democracy is well fostered.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okunzo-Sawari. Let's get to Sazerwole. I know you've listened to Cocoa panelists. INEC is having this big bowl of collection of blames, anger, and everything. What exactly prompted this postponement or deferment of elections?
Well, I think that issue has been sufficiently stated in both the press conference in the early hours of Saturday morning and in the briefing to stakeholders on Saturday afternoon. It was a combination of factors, but basically issues dealing with logistics delivery.
But we saw the coming. INEC saw this coming, didn't it?
INEC did not see bad weather coming. It was force majeure. INEC did not see that coming. Nobody, except God Clubson, saying that's coming. But yes, we planned for all else being equal, and we gave some allowance in case things happened. And right till the last minute, before the announcement was made, some believed that we could still go on with the election. And quite honestly, INEC could have gone on with the elections. But what kind of service delivery would have come out of that? I think Professor Pate, Dr. Kunzwa, and even the IG have made allusions to those kind of things. So I think the statements did say that it was a very painful decision. It was not one that was taken lightly. It was one that was taken in the overall interests of the country. We could have been populist and gone ahead and say, let's fulfill all righteousness. We gave a date, that date is sacrosanct, and go ahead with it. But at what cost to the country, short-term and long-term? The issue is that, do you go ahead and, as some have suggested, conduct elections where the logistics issues had been totally overcome, and then leaving out some parts of the country where maybe they would have started much later, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock or something like that? What would have been the feeling at the end of the day? So we had to weigh things all around. And at the end of the day, we just thought, look, let's bite the bullet. This is a difficult one, a painful one, but leadership demands that you must take certain decisions that are painful, that are difficult, and that appear very unpopular at particular times. Having said that, the angst and the feelings of Nigerians cannot be taken for granted. Everybody has a right to be angry. All that inconvenience have a right, quite honestly, to be angry. And that is understandable in the circumstances. But I think, as Dr. Kunzwa said, by the time you sit down and reflect on it, of course, one will be bothered about one's personal feelings, one's personal interests, one's personal losses. But when you look at it, sitting back, reflecting on it, when the anger has ebbed a bit and weighing things down, we think, yes, it might have been not too beneficial to certain individuals, but in the overall interest of the country. It is better to do an election, a more acceptable election, where everybody has an equal chance of starting at the same time and getting their voice heard at the same time, as said by the law. The law requires that all elections must take place at the same time all around the country. Yeah. So if we had done otherwise and said, okay, let's stagger the election, that, I think, would probably be, on reflection, less popular decision to have taken. It's easy. It would have been easy for the commission to have sat and said, go ahead. But quite honestly, we believe, maybe we're wrong, we believe it would not have been in the best interest of the country to proceed at the time we wanted to proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sazerwole. Some who have reacted have pinned what has happened on what they describe as poor supply chain management. Was it necessarily the case that there was no correct reading of the supply chain processes in INEC to anticipate what the bottlenecks would be at the last minute, including the issue of force majeure arising from poor weather conditions? How good, therefore, is INEC's supply chain management process?
Okay, good. We think it's reasonable. A lot of people who have commented, I don't think, appreciate. They probably know, but they don't appreciate the complexities involved in the whole planning and execution, implementation of all that is planned. There are certain things you should envisage Yes, this is February. Yes, in certain parts of the country, the Harmattan haze and the weather is such that may not be. Yes. But also, you weigh that against this. Even as I speak, the candidacy of some people in certain parts of the country is not settled. You have to know the dynamics of everything that's involved. We have over 600 cases, 640 and still counting, cases arising out of primaries. And out of those cases, quite a number of them have injunctions, some conflicting. So as we sit here, it's difficult to say in some cases with certainty who candidates are, which in certain constituencies and districts, whether Party A or Party B have candidates in certain elections. For 24 hours election, orders were being made against the commission. That's a fact. In Cross River, people have not concentrated on that. Within the last 48 hours preceding election, the governorship election, there were issues. There are issues. In one case, a certain candidate went to court and they said, no, you're not emerged winner from the primaries. But in another case, the same court of coordinate jurisdiction have said, look, no, whoever emerged, the candidate that emerged, the second candidate is not the candidate of the party, cannot be the candidate of the party. So who is the candidate of that party in that particular instance? We are familiar with Zamfara. The two existing conflicting judgments. So you must take these things into consideration. Do you put this party on the ballot or you don't put it on the ballot? Or do you go ahead and waste, quote unquote, public funds by doing two ballots? One with and one without. That can be a terrible waste. So these dynamics, these other things, there's a lot of correlation and interrelationships between what we do as election managers and what other agencies are doing. And in this case, judiciary, for example, is one that has impacted. When they talk about supply chain management, they don't look at things like that. So you have to wait to a certain extent for most of the litigations to be settled before you proceed to print your ballot boxes or your ballot papers. Now, if you print your ballot papers without that party, as at the time you're printing, the courts have said there's a judgment or an order saying party X is not on the ballot. Of course, you're not going to put, because if you do, you'll be contemptuous of the court. You're not going to put party X on the ballot. So you have to wait. And they write to you and say, look, there's an appeal going on. And that appeal is likely to be determined on the 15th of February. What do you do? Again, security issues. I think the retired IG said so as well. We have to wait and ensure that we don't release this, even if we can print and there are no disputes, you can't release these security documents. And Nigeria is one of the very few places where you talk of sensitive materials in terms of elections. In some cases, they use standard A4 paper. In some other countries like Argentina, the political parties print their ballots. That's inconceivable in this country. Oh. Nigeria is one of the few countries where you print your ballots to currency standard with the same security features, sometimes even more. It's also one of the few countries where you escort your ballot papers in the same way as you escort currency. And you cannot take these things too early to certain places. Between yesterday and today, I've seen on social media, for example, ballots allegedly INEC ballots. And one senator, for example, tweeted that these things were being taken to a governor's residence and being stamped. That was not ballot papers from INEC. That was not, they resembled it. The stamps there were not quite our stamps. Everybody knows that we stamp, on election day we have to stamp at the back, but the stamps are own security documents because we don't want people seeing the stamps. These are the kind of security considerations, and this security consideration affects your logistics. You can't print on time. You cannot deliver too early for fear and risk that these things will come out to people. But we trudge it on.
Yeah. Well, so thank you very much. You've raised a number of points, most of them legal. But I would like us to pause on this legal perspective. Alternatively, I could ask some questions so that you explain almost immediately. Let's take the one of injunctions, for instance. You will have conflicted injunctions and so on and so forth. But arising from the Supreme Court decision in Amity's case, it is clear now that it is the parties that are contesting elections. So, except, for instance, say in a place like Rivers, and then Zamfara, where the decision was clear in the case of Rivers that, look, political party A could not field candidates in the elections. In Zamfara, it was a question of which of them, and you're having conflicting decisions. Could INEC, this is again with the benefit of hindsight, not just go, you have so many political parties who are registered, so many of them who have also submitted names of candidates at some point based on your cutoff date, to say, look, at this cutoff date, we are printing the ballot papers. So whether the court decides otherwise or not, it is the party, not the specific candidates, the party and the logo. So if you vote for that party, if it eventually a court decision says, look, that party shouldn't have been there, the votes scored by that party in that election will, of course, naturally be nullified. Couldn't that take place? Does INEC have to wait, as it were, until the last minute, until the last injunction, until it has clarity of the last injunction, which leads me to the next point. How much of in-country activities does INEC engage in with regard to the materials? How much of your materials are printed locally? We recall one past election cycle. They said they were waiting for the materials to be printed from South Africa.
From South Africa?
Yes.
So, Mr. Ozi.
The first one, I think there's a fallacy there with due respect, sir.
Yes.
Now, and that is this. In Zamfara case, it's not a question of whether it's A or B. It was whether the party should be on the ballot at all. The same thing in Rivers. Because of intra-party in those two states. So, in both states, it's whether APC should be on the ballot or not. They started as internal conflicts, a civil war within the parties as to who was the candidate. But in Zamfara, don't forget, INEC wrote a letter saying, well, having not conducted primaries, you should not be on the ballot.
That's right.
So that will not avail that. So APC, what will happen if we put APC in the ballot in any of the states and APC won? In the meantime, APC should not at all be on the ballot. You can imagine the confusion that will cause. Where it's a question of whether it's A or B, that's fair enough. But sometimes, in many of the cases, it was a question, and those two states, the whole states, it was a question of whether the party should be in the ballot at all. So that is still there. So that your first point will not be addressed.
You know, well, that's done, but that's two states. You have 34 other states and the FCT.
Yes, so we should have gone ahead. We could have. We should have gone ahead in 34 states and left out 2 states. No, sir. I don't think that would throw up its own challenges and issues, and that may be wrong, contrary to the law, which says all elections should take place at the same time throughout the country.
All right.
That's the point. On the second issue.
Yeah, Professor Patel.
Don't we have a cut-off date for all these court cases?
No, there is no cut-off date. You cannot hamstring the judiciary that way. There is no cut-off case. There's a cut-off case for commencing the action, but not for...
I mean, for submission of list of
precisely, that's the point.
For a list of...
Yes, that by also dates, court or no court.
No, that would be disrespectful and contemptuous of the court. You cannot overreach the decisions of the court. No such thing. You cannot do that.
Felix Ogbado, retired AIG, you are a lawyer as well. I mean, let's examine this. Is it necessarily the case that, look, up until the eve of election, or right, say maybe a court sits on Saturday morning when voting has already commenced, say, look, you must be on the ballot. Would that be a reasonable decision? INEC has its own timetable. Let's get your response to this. That's
not reasonable at all.
Yes.
In fact, the truth of the matter is that we really need to amend some of our laws. We need to fix time frame within which all cases pending in court must be decided to enable INEC prepare their ballot boxes.
And papers.
Yeah, their ballot papers, their ballot papers. So that we don't have all these kind of controversies. So the judiciary needs to also wake up. You know, all cases must be expeditiously, tried and decisions, judgments given to enable INEC carry on with their own responsibility. But as long as we have this vacuum, this problem lingering, the problem continues to be there, persistent. So we need to address it.
But the printing of your ballot, let's say of your sensitive documents. Yes. Where does that take place?
It takes place both in Nigeria and outside of the country. There are issues of capacity. There are serious issues of capacity to print the quality, and also issues of delivering within time. We have tried this before, including using the mint. There are issues. And you do know some of your currencies are not printed locally, partly because of that. So it's those that their capacities and their capabilities to deliver within time are printed locally, but quite a number of them. And what a lot of them do, what we insist on, is that there's partnership between local printers and foreign ones who have the capacity. So there's a synergy. So it's in both areas, both domestically and outside of the country.
Okay, thanks a lot, Saze. Jide Ojo and Okunzuwa, and of course, the others will pursue Saze in the meantime. Look, when INEC announced its calendar of activities, part of what was disclosed was that, look, going forward, there is now certainty as to when elections will be conducted. They said the third Saturday of the month of February in an election year. Well, here we are, weather is being used as an alibi now, and we all know our weather patterns, even though the climate change might come and so on and so forth. In some jurisdictions, you are hardly likely to see elections being conducted in the dead of winter, for instance. So if we are cognizant of this, might this therefore occasion a slight review of that, at least so that it still falls within the time delimited for the conduct of elections before the swearing-in date? Jide Ojo.
For me, the law says all elections are to be conducted not earlier than 150 days and not later than 30 days. Now, INEC of its own volition decided to choose the month of February, maybe for good reasons that it will not be raining during that season, and of course the materials will not be soiled and all of that. But I'm just reflecting that a lot needs to be tidied up, because what Mr. Uzi is saying is a worrisome development that may not help us to have a sacrosanct date for elections if our legal framework is not tinkered with. You have a scenario that he has painted. Shouldn't we, for instance, just have all the registered political parties on the ballot rather than customizing?
Precisely.
And then, even if in the morning of election, a court injunction says this, it will be, this party will not be on the ballot, this party will be on the ballot. The party is registered, the party is on, because I recall that part of what caused the logistic challenge of 2011, was that, 2007, there was isolated postponement of election. I also observed that election. I think I was in Lagos as well, where you have omission of names and pictures of some candidates. That time, Professor Morris, who wanted to customize to even candidates as to if you are the one contesting, your picture to help the voters in identifying who the candidate and the parties are. But that created a whole lot of confusion, because I recall that while we were in Lagos observing the election, they discovered that one or two party logos and names were not there. So for that reason, they had to postpone while we were already on the field. So we've been having this tricky situation. I think if our legal framework will not be amended to help INEC to have a seamless logistics in terms of, because even the INEC chairman alluded to that on Saturday, that even as at a day, Friday, there were still court injunctions, being served on the commission, 640, for an action that it has no hand in. Because internal affairs, party primaries are internal affairs of political parties. But if the parties will not behave themselves, shouldn't INEC think of another way out in saying, okay, we have 91 registered parties. If you are contesting or you are not contesting, we will have you on the ballot. So if it's in the afternoon of the election day, a court says this candidate will be on the ballot, it shows us the party, because it would not have campaigned. And then the likelihood of him getting, the party getting sufficient vote to be declared winner may not be there. Look at even the way some of our contestants are behaving. The law says you have to withdraw. If you want to withdraw your candidacy, you have up to 45 days to election to do that. We are seeing candidates withdrawing even 20 days, 15 days to election. That is not even a court-ordered injunction.
Yeah, but INEC is saying you must remain. INEC is insisting that you must remain on the field of play.
The law says so, not INEC.
The law says so, but you will be surprised that why will our let me shock you, Kingsley. Do you know that there are even parties that are fielding underage candidates in this election? The guy that was said to be the youngest candidate in the presidential race, who is a vice presidential candidate to one of the candidates, is 30 years old. And the minimum age for contesting election in Nigeria for presidential and vice presidential is 35.
And has INEC accepted the candidature of that
party? It has to, because Section 31 Subsection 1 says INEC cannot reject. So these are some of the things we are having to deal with. The desperation of the political elite is also there. It's not helping matter. As at yesterday morning, INEC's vehicle, 13 of them were burnt down in Akwa Ibom. We are not even having an election. On Saturday morning, rather. 2 people died, 13 people. Look at the killing, 66 people in Kaduna. Look at the killing in Borno, 7 or 11 people died. Even when election is not holding. So where do we go from here? Do we want to have staggered election? Do we want to have also nationwide election? What can we amend in the law that will help? Because for me, my worry is this should not be a new normal.
This is a
huge cost.
This is a clear reflection of the behavior of the typical Nigerian politician and elite, who is always desperate for power, wanting everything either for himself or for it to be destroyed completely. Now, follow the comments, a critical observation of the comments of some of our leaders after the shifting of these elections. One would have expected a clear exhibition of statesmanship in this kind of tense and critical moments in the history of this country. But what some of them have been talking or have been saying appears so treacherous and insensitive to the future of this country, as if the elections did not hold today, Nigeria will finish tomorrow. And I sometimes wonder, do we continue going through this same cycle every 4 years in this country? Look at the cost. Number one, look at the desperation of our political behaviors. I mean, the behavior of our elites, those who are in politics, who are the greatest beneficiaries of the system. When you see how they behave, look at the party primaries, for heaven's sake, and the outcome of these party primaries. The failure for them to regulate themselves. They have no right, most of them have no right to accuse INEC of failure because of their own behavior. INEC shifting or INEC's weaknesses could be explained from the internal as well as the external circumstances. And the external circumstances relate principally to the behavior of our politicians who cannot even control their own states, who are provoking, inciting, and pushing people towards desperate behaviors because they want to remain in power. Look, now we are shifting the presidential elections. And the principal problem may not necessarily be related to the presidential elections, but those who are contesting along the presidency and at the state levels, where you have some fractious fights between the various groups, and only God knows how these things will come out. And just like I've said, the cost on this nation is enormous. Just let me give you a very typical example from my own level at the universities. Last week, we were meeting throughout in the universities to set our calendars, looking at what happened during the strike. We have lost about 3 months or so. We are now resettling our calendars. We have agreed on when the universities, when at least our university will be reopened, when our admissions will be at the PG level will be announced. Suddenly, this announcement came. Yesterday, my vice chancellor called, my deputy vice chancellor called me to say, okay, we have to meet again. We were to meet yesterday to have a look again at the calendar in view of INEC's announcement, so that we could now, many of our students and staff are involved in the elections. So, and this is happening at almost every other level in this country. So, to what extent can we blame our politicians also for this kind of behavior? We cannot continue just blaming INEC. INEC is also made up of credible individuals who are also Nigerians like us. But we are not focusing on the behavior of our elite. Look at how they have destroyed the local governments. And we are increasingly destroying our institutions, almost every sector. So today, which institutions can we look at in this country and say is credible enough that you can believe in them?
Are you, Professor, bless you, I'm sure that you want to pop in. I'm sure, look, let's not bring in the performance of the State Independent Electoral Commission.
But they are also controlled by the states, and it's a reflection. It's a reflection.
That is the greater worries. Because we know that the challenges that state independent electoral commissions bring upon themselves and upon the voters and the credibility or lack of it in local government elections is one terrible matter that, look, if we were to use that as a basis...
So Kingsley, do we continue accepting this kind of things as part of our democratic processes?
No, that's the reason we're talking about.
Can we continue taking this? For our political elites, for how long can we continue taking it?
The answer is obvious.
What is the answer?
Let's get Mr. Felix Obado to come in at this point. Note how there are concerns as raised. The dynamics are enormous from what INEC had explained to us, and also every one of you have raised your own concerns. What are your greatest concerns now in areas of planning and execution of the such that this recurring decimal of, okay, it's either logistics, it's either some other operational matters, it's not as if we're just practicing now to go to the ballot for the first time in the history of our country?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. You recall that we've had people who classified the political gladiators into two categories, the contenders and the pretenders. Now, you can imagine a country where over 90 persons indicated their interest to contest for the office of the president. So we have to really amend our laws. We have to tinker our laws to empower INEC. For instance, if one of the conditions for registration is that you must ensure you have presence in all the 36 states of this country and FCT inclusive before you get registered, that'd be good. It will help us reduce the number, because when you talk about putting all the parties on the ballot paper, you can imagine the level of stark illiteracy we have in this country. That's one of my fears. You are teaching them how to fold it, how to thumbprint on the ballot paper, how to fold it, how to put into the ballot box and all of that. You can imagine the size. Even some of us are entertaining the fears that some of these ballot boxes might not be able to take all the ballot papers because they're so big. So, for instance, we really need to know who are the true contenders and get rid of the pretenders. It's very, very important. It's very, very important. If you amend the laws to empower INEC, because INEC is so overburdened with all of these things. Some of these situations, scenarios that play in the book, can do without them. We can knock them off completely. To be able to empower INEC to perform optimally and give us the anticipated results.
INEC is talking about, and of course there's recognition for that, the complexity of the dynamics of election management on the national scale. Of course, the UX example would not be appropriate in this instance because states, conduct their own elections. And unfortunately, as we have also acknowledged, state independent electoral commissions in the country, aren't up to scratch in terms of their independence and also in terms of their performance. Let's go over to our Benin Network Center again, Dr. Osawaru Okunzwa. Dr. Okunzwa, there are a number of issues on the table now, supply chain management, in terms of INEC, and then INEC scheduling of the election calendar going forward every election cycle, 3rd February of that particular year. But bearing in mind that we have weather issues at this time, so what ordinarily should be done? Plus, the rash of litigation and how INEC might seek to cope with that so that it doesn't get hobbled on the eve or the very day of elections commencing.
Well, I'd like to start my response commenting on the statement made by AIG Wago. I don't agree with him. INEC should have no powers whatsoever to determine who is going to be on the ballot. That's why it's a democracy. It is the people that will choose. Even if we had 1,000 candidates, it is the people that will make up their mind whether one is fit or the other one is not fit to govern. It is people who confer mandates. That should never, in fact, that should never be contemplated. In fact, it's anti-democratic, I'm afraid to say. And then going to the issue of supply chain or logistics, we have a lot of doubts. We have a lot of doubts, not running away from it. My standpoint is that we should resolve all these doubts in favor of INEC, in the interest of our democracy, in the interest of fostering our nation to be governed by the rule of law. Most of these things fundamentally cannot admit any tangible excuse, because it's not only about the election that you have logistics. Pharmacists across the country move drugs from one place to the other. Drugs are sensitive items. Human lives depend on drugs. And Osaze Uzi mentioned the movement and escort of currency. Currency is very sensitive. We have bullion vans all over. They move these materials. So with adequate planning, adequate forecast, and all that, the issue of logistics should not actually arise. But I have said we have to place our faith in INEC. We have to help INEC make us take a decision about who will govern us. And then for the issue of the weather, obviously, Osaze Uzi has also declared a force majeure in that regard. Force majeure cannot be on the side of INEC. Maybe other sufferers down the lane. INEC is empowered by law. INEC is giving resources. I have not complained. National Assembly has been very generous in awarding your resources and so on. So the planning, the forecast, and so on should not only guide INEC, should guide the entire populace. I also agree that INEC being the body empowered to manage our elections is just a subsystem within a constellation of other subsystems in the country, that most of the issues may not be within their control. But that is not a reason why it should become a culture. Not just this particular INEC, not this particular management. It's been on. So a lot of people, too, are also speculating, could there be interference from outside? But all those ones, for us, I think we should downplay. The election was postponed by a week. Let us go to the polls in 4 or 5 days' time and decide. Now, all the complications we have that we are probably decrying and so on, these are ingredients of a vibrant democracy. That a person has a case and is taking it to court, that sort of person should be commended, because there are other ways of resolving conflicts. The person has shown violence. He says the court should make an adjudication on a thing that has caused him to be aggrieved. So INEC should be responsive to that. It's an institution of the country. It's an institution that rests on law. It should be responsive to what the courts are saying. Now, in administering its processes, there must be a kind of margin, a kind of buffer that we're able to absorb some of these things Nigerians are discussing across board now. The INEC should have enough shock absorbers to be able to say, if this one happened, this one will kick in. If the other one happened, the other one will kick in. So it should not become our culture, but we must persist in supporting INEC. We don't expect INEC to be flawless all the time, but we want to make sure that anytime they are giving us an excuse, it's not an excuse that would generate a lot of controversies in the country. It's not an excuse that would detract from the credibility of INEC. That notwithstanding, we have to support INEC. We have to make sure our democracy is sustained. We have to make sure all our institutions are supported and fostered to deliver the goods.
All right, Dr. Osawara Okunzuwa, thank you very much. Gentlemen, we're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll take the tweets and then get more comments from our guests before we call it a day on the first part of matters arising from the election postponement.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toba Daba Ben and Ishak Modibo Kawu now. This edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standards to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG. Transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency cautions. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Team huddle.
But we lost.
Don't be tired, guys. This isn't a loss. It's a practice for winning.
Nothing makes a mother prouder than seeing her child growing up. But I know as he learns to lead, he'll face even more dirt, germs, and risk of illness.
That's why in changing seasons, you need strong Dettol protection. Because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
All right, you're welcome back. Still on Good Morning Nigeria. Let's take some of the tweets that have come in already from our viewers using our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. Festus Akimboyewa, but the postponement of the election, sorry, I take that again. Why postponement of the election is against the interest of democracy with 91 political parties. Many court cases and decisions arising from party primaries, the postponement of the election by INEC wasn't altogether a surprise. We must reduce the number of our political parties.
From Mike Ayanko is this tweet, the consequences of INEC action at the last minute left much to be desired. The cost was enormous, but we urge all Nigerians to forgive and forget. Let's see it as a sacrifice to the nation and come out to vote candidate of our choice come Saturday, 23rd February 2019.
Amobolahan tweets, now for whatever reason the elections were postponed by INEC, it must deliver not only a transparent election, but must be seen to be free, fair, and credible, home and abroad.
Well, question still for INEC. Why would an institution that has planned this election for years suddenly postpone it? The reasons are not just there. They're ridiculous.
Mike Ayako again. The rescheduling of last Saturday's election by INEC was very unfortunate. Sadly, too, unflappable INEC had not tendered unqualified apology to Nigerians. The concern is whether the challenges the commission raised will be ameliorated within the next 1 week of postponement. Yes.
Okay. Ogbeni Zah says the damage is done already. The next thing is how do we ensure the sensitive materials already distributed don't get to the hands of politicians.
Ibrahim Modu Aji tweets, now voters shouldn't despair to exercise their civic responsibility. Politicians should stop attacking INEC and support them in this very trying moment. INEC must also brace up to ensure that the elections are free and fair on the rescheduled date.
Law Alpha C says postponement for effective delivery has been with us, but the timing of this one is the height of disappointment and very painful.
And let's go back now to the second set of tweets. Husseini Baba May tweets that the decision to reschedule the elections painful but necessary. Nigerians deserve credible elections.
Chris Simeon says, it's funny indeed. INEC has prepared for this election for 3.5 years, but it was quite unfortunate that INEC woke up midnight, 5 hours to the election. That election is postponed. It's uncalled for.
Now, Shakiri Raufu tweets, I left for the polling unit by 6 a.m. and not aware of the postponement. Well, postponement for peace is better than crisis, if not postponed.
That's of the spirit. Mutana Farouk says, logistics problem in our electoral processes, which is gradually becoming a perpetual norm. As this grammar here, odoriferous saga in circumventing the credibility of our electoral processes, the disappointment is quite disappointing. Okay, the postponement is quite disappointing. But if it's the betterment of Nigeria, then it's a blessing.
Chibuzo tweets, my anger is why 2:30 a.m. and just some hours to the election.
Cecilia Okoroma, INEC's election postponement must be condemned, but politicians should note that their actions and inactions equally contributed.
Mohammed Satome tweets, I'm very glad about the postponement because if the elections had taken place, it could not have been credible. What we want from INEC is free, fair, and credible elections.
Sani Michael Omakoji says, it's unbelievable that in less than 6 hours to the much-anticipated 2019 elections, suddenly INEC realized that they have logistics and operational challenge. Shouldn't they have noticed that a week before the eve of election? What then have they prepared for? I'm pained.
All right. Chris Simeon again tweets, INEC Chairman Mahmoud Yakubu made mention of logistics and operational challenges as the reason for the postponement. My question is, will the logistics and operational problems be fixed before 23rd February to avoid further postponement?
Another set of tweets, that's tweet 3 now. Mutana Farouk, the desperation of some politicians is tantamount to the difficult conduct of elections in Nigeria. No matter how meticulous INEC is, some desperate politicians and their cohorts will still move to circumvent the processes, while we're so inexorable to stick to rules.
Onome John tweets, now the INEC staff speaking, he has been on several stations saying INEC is good to go. Why have you not made this known before now?
Onodeko tweets, INEC should reprint the ballot papers to avoid manipulation.
You will respond to that. But I'm sure that, I mean, these are part of the barbs that are still flying around, by the way. I'm sure that INEC is having a cool head now to focus on the assignment. Josh tweets, says INEC has failed Nigerians. Firstly, how can they fail in the last minute after years of preparations? And secondly, what happens to the previous logistics used in time past? Sympathize with millions of Nigerians who lost financially.
Yeah. Mustafa Bukar Kolo says, to me, this postponement is unfortunate and disappointing. But nobody knows the blessings that are behind it. I call on the electorate to remain optimistic and come out en masse to vote for the candidate of their choice. God bless Nigeria. That's the last tweet we have.
We have, yes. Thank you very much for those tweets. Mr. Sazauzi, today is the 18th of February, so 5 days to the rescheduled date. Are we good to go?
All measures have been put in place to ensure a smooth takeoff of the general elections. But the chairman of the commission did outline a 6-point step-by-step guide. So we are faithfully adhering to that. Materials that were out are almost all back in the vaults of the central bank. Some did not leave the vaults because of uncertainty. So some did not leave, so that's not a problem. There's been some exposure of some sensitive materials, no doubt. The commission will look into it. The commission is meeting today and to review things and faithfully work through those 6 steps to ensure that elections on Saturday 23rd will be take off as scheduled and will be credible.
Joe, any concerns?
Of course, there are concerns, concerns with fake news making the rounds, because this is capable of even causing very great anxiety and loss of faith and confidence in the system. I mean, virtually every state you hear, some people have hijacked INEC materials, some have tampered, which are all false. So, you know, the social cost to this postponement is huge and is beyond what INEC can contain, because now you have to deal with the issue of trust and confidence in the system. Even Mr. Uzi cannot 100% give assurance that come Saturday we will have it smooth, because all things may not be equal. If the security agency does not support the commission, if political parties do not behave themselves, we have made, I mean, on daily basis, monitor the media. You see attack on INEC infrastructure. For what purpose? Even when elections have been postponed, should you be going ahead to burn INEC vehicles? Who replaces? It's public funds that will be used to replace those. I mean, why burning smart card readers and all of that? And like INEC chairman said, it takes approximately 6 months to procure smart card readers. They have to be customized. So some people are just not interested in having this election. So all things being equal, we will have it good on Saturday. But I do hope and believe that, you know, the commission needs the support of all of us, critical stakeholders, civil society organizations, the media, the security agencies, the political parties, and their candidates most especially. And above everything, come Saturday, I'm worried about party agents. Many of them are very disruptive because they have not even been trained before their deployment. They behave like bull in China's shop, basically because they want to be seen to be working. And if they disrupt the process, even if the process takes us seamlessly, and they decided to be very disruptive, that could also not help the system. So all hands have to be on deck. The worries are there, but security agencies above everything need to redouble their effort. Now that they know that some of the materials are being moved by land instead of by here. You know, the chairman said slow-moving, articulated vehicles are now being used to haul the election materials. I hope some people somewhere will not go and waylay and set ablaze some of those very sensitive documents. Because if they do, whether you like it or not, much as INEC wanted to have election all over the entire country, some of the elections may have to be postponed.
When CBN is moving currency, you see the phalanx of security detail who accompany that. So that should be part of what I believe INEC should request for. Shouldn't that be the case?
That's assumed.
Retired AIG Obuado. Let's the security element now of personnel, of materials, and indeed of the general environment, because of the apparent lawlessness that is attending. INEC is becoming like a soft target. You know, if you are disgusted, you feel, just go to INEC, disrupt their operations. What should be the security focus in and around INEC premises and indeed their facilities and their materials at this time?
Let me correct one impression. When CBN moves currency, the currencies are moved in armored vehicles. Now, INEC is going to use ordinary vehicles, maybe trailers, buses, and things like that. So it's not the same scenario, okay? But back to the point you just raised, the security agencies must work in tandem with INEC. They must cooperate. Don't forget, the elections we had in Osun and the Ekiti states that were being praised to the high heavens, it was because it was one state for a whole day. The police deployed 30,000 policemen to Ekiti, 18,000 to Osun. We're not going to have that scenario this time around because the election must be held the same day. So it's not the same number of security men had in those states that we're going to have now. But having said that, the security men, no matter the numbers, must ensure that election materials, sensitive materials are secured. And like I said, INEC should live up to the expectation of the public. No more excuses. They have a whole week now to make sure that all the materials are delivered to their various locations and they are properly secured. Secured in fireproof environments. People should watch out to make sure we don't want to have, we don't have more incidents of fire breaks here and there. We don't have incidents of, like the last speaker said, people hijacking election materials and all of that. And I want to key into the appeals made by prominent Nigerians and even some foreign nations and the foreign observers that Nigerians, it has happened.
All right,
we're going through a lot of pain. So let us conduct ourselves peacefully and make sure these elections come peacefully and we have the good results.
Thank you very much, Sir Felix Obaudu. Professor Pate, securing the confidence of the voter is key here. Because at the end of the day, we don't want issue of voter apathy in whatever case. The election must hold.
Yes.
How do we redirect this?
Well, it's very, very important. Even this morning, 7 o'clock on my way to this point, I had the former, Botswana President, Festus Mogae,
briefly, please, sir,
talking about the apprehension on whether INEC can still address all the logistic issues. Well, we believe it could. And one of the things that INEC needs to do is to ensure that within the remaining 4 or 5 days, it goes with the stakeholders, the observers, all those who are involved should be briefed minute by minute so that they could have the confidence of the rest of Nigerians. And we pray that no court will wake up one morning to give an injunction 1 or 2 days again to INEC to scuttle the whole thing.
All right, thank you very much. From our Benin Network Center, Dr. Osawaro Okunzua, what are your brief closing thoughts on this? Do you have any concerns that you think INEC and other stakeholders should address before voting on Saturday? And in particular, how do you re-galvanize apathetic voters?
Well, for the issue of apathy, I don't really think the postponement should automatically lead to it. And as a matter of fact, paradoxically, the postponement can actually ginger those who were not keen on voting the first time to come out. So the effect will only be known after the election, whether the postponement caused apathy or not, but it's not an automatic cause. But we encourage Nigerians, those who have collected their PVCs, to go to the polling units and conduct themselves very peacefully in joining other Nigerians in selecting who our next president should be. And when it comes to the turn of the governors, who our governors will be for those who are going to conduct governorship elections. But generally, as I've always said, I think doubts were generated, but those doubts must be resolved in favor of INEC. We don't have any alternative. We should all support INEC. We plead with INEC to do all it could to make sure the election will hold on Saturday, because elections are very, very critical, central to democracies. It's the only time we have recourse to the people for their opinion, critical opinion about who to confer their mandate on. So we should hold the process as sacred and make sure we mobilize and muster all our resources towards that end.
All right, Dr. Osawaro Okunzua, public affairs analyst, one of our regulars joining us from our Benin Network studios. We'd like to thank you for your contributions to our discussion this morning. And here with us in the Abuja studios, deep appreciation to retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, Felix Obaudu, who is also a lawyer. Thank you very much for being with us.
It's my pleasure.
Jide Ojo, public affairs analyst, thank you for being with us. Professor Umaru Pate, Professor of Mass Communication at Bayo University, thanks a lot for being around.
You're welcome.
As well as, of course, Mr. Oluwole Osaze-Ozi, who is INEC Director of Publicity and Voter Education. Mr. Osaze-Ozi, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Best of luck.
Best of luck to all Nigerians.
Okay, best of luck to INEC first, then to all of us. All right, so let's go back out to our sports desk.